The interesting thing that I started to unpack when I took the plunge, in sobriety and started working with plant medicines, I started to look into the history of AA, which I was already a big buff on.
Okay.
And I'd heard this, but I really did some further research and found that, the whole premise of the 12 steps is based on the co-founder, Bill Wilson, having this profound spiritual experience. It's known as the white light experience.
Okay.
He was in a treatment center, detoxing from alcohol. He describes it as the whole room turned white. There was like this wind of God blew through the room, and the dude was struck sober. It's really trippy. And so the purpose of the 12 steps is to try to recreate over time that type of experience, right? Where people can have this direct conscious contact, this relationship with the higher power that renders you sober because you have that relationship, and that's what tethers you to peace and serenity, right? The interesting thing about it is, because I also wanted to be ready to sort of, defend my case if people are like, well, you're supposed to be sober, you're working with psychedelics. In the research, I found that when Bill Wilson had that experience, they had given him a plant medicine called belladonna in treatment, which is what they'd use for DTs.
Yep.
So it was a day or two after they had administered this plant medicine to him that he had this experience that birthed AA.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's crazy. Then later in the 60s, he worked with Aldous Huxley and used LSD therapeutically. And it was so effective on his depression that he still had at 22, 25 years sober. He was still totally messed up, that he wanted to bring LSD into Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
And the fellow elders were not having it for obvious reasons. But I can't help but think, like, where would the recovery movement be now if in the 1960s they had adopted that deeper level of healing? And so it makes sense that now, we're finding these subsects of people like myself that have had issues with addiction and are in recovery who are also finding tremendous healing using these experiences that recreate that white light experience, right?
Yeah.
If you do 5-MeO-DMT, I don't know what else you could call that but a white light experience, right? There's no experience on earth that I've ever had that has brought me closer to the understanding that there is a God and that it is a loving God and that it's omnipresent and omnipotent and that's all there is in any of this, right? It's like that's where you're trying to get to when you use drugs to kill the pain. It's just a really ineffective way to get there. There's too many detours.